My wife's ex came back into her life, and not only did she let him stay in our home, but she also gave him my pajamas. When I saw her gently drying his hair, I suddenly realized she wasn't always so cold and distant. I had been on a business trip out of town and decided to come home a day early to surprise my wife. Little did I know, I was in for a shock myself. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The lights were on. "I'm home," I called out, but there was no response. All I could hear was the sound of a hairdryer coming from the bathroom. Following the noise, I walked over, and what I saw stopped me. My wife wasn't alone. There was another man in the bathroom with her. The clothes he was wearing looked very familiar. They were the new pajamas Mary had bought for me recently. I remember telling her I didn't like silk pajamas, which had upset her. She had said, "Wear them or don't, it's up to you." Of course, I wore them because I always appreciated her gestures. But now, seeing those pajamas on someone else, I had to admit they suited him better than they ever did me. This thought made my hands clench into fists at my sides. The man was facing Mary, his hair slightly damp. Mary was on her tiptoes, holding the hairdryer, and softly said, "Lower your head a bit." She complained, "Why are you so tall?" The man chuckled quietly but obediently bent down, bringing his head closer to her. Through the half-length mirror, I saw a gentle smile on Mary's face, her eyes soft and warm. I had never seen such tenderness in Mary before. It was a stark contrast to the woman I had known for 5 years, from dating to marriage. She had always been reserved, rarely showing much emotion. She would smile, but it never reached her eyes. I had accepted this as part of her personality, believing that everyone has their quirks. I thought she treated me differently than others, but now it seemed I was just like everyone else. Leaning against the doorframe, my mind was a whirlwind, but I quickly forced myself to calm down. I knocked on the open door. "Excuse me, you too," I said, breaking the intimate atmosphere. The two of them finally noticed me. The man looked at me, his expression shifting from confusion to understanding. He raised an eyebrow and gave me a challenging smile. Mary, on the other hand, was startled by my sudden appearance and nearly fell. The man caught her, and my outstretched hand froze in midair. Mary frowned at me. "Why are you home early?" I crossed my arms. "Am I interrupting something? Have you two already taken this to the bedroom, or were you just about to?" Mary's face darkened. "Seth, you're talking nonsense." I dropped my suitcase to the floor with a thud. "Why don't you take a look at what you're doing? Alone in the bathroom with another man." Mary seemed furious, glaring at me. The man, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward and shielded Mary behind him. "You've got it all wrong," he said. "We're just friends. Isn't it a bit inappropriate to speak about your wife like that?" His tone was accusatory, as if I had insulted them. I chuckled. "If you're going to say something so shameless, shouldn't you at least let go of my wife's hand first?" His face darkened. "If you have a problem with me, say it directly. No need to drag Mary into this." I sneered. "You might not say anything bad, but your actions speak volumes." The man, clearly agitated, took a step forward, but Mary pulled him back. "Both of you, shut up," he protested. "Mary, are you just going to let him slander us like this?" I scoffed. "What else? You want to curse me out or hit me? Or maybe you two should just admit you're in love. I'm a generous guy. I love to see true love flourish." "Shut up," Mary said, grabbing my hand and pulling me out of the bathroom. "We need to talk." I didn't resist, just turned back to the man and smiled. "Make yourself at home." Mary dragged me into the bedroom and slammed the door shut. For the first time, she seemed to lose her usual composure. I glanced at the bed. It was perfectly made, not a wrinkle in sight. "Looks like you didn't get a chance to use the bed. I must have come home too early." "Shut up," Mary snapped, her eyes blazing. "Do you have to be so nasty? You weren't like this before." I laughed softly. "What do you expect me to be like? Quietly accepting being cheated on?" Mary took a deep breath. "Seth, I don't want to fight. Let's talk about this later. He's an old college friend who just got back from abroad and has nowhere to stay. I let him stay here for the night. Stop making a scene." I looked at Mary. "Is this what you wanted to tell me behind closed doors?" I had hoped for a reasonable explanation, but it was clear I was just fooling myself. "Got it. He can stay here. No problem. You two enjoy." I turned to leave. Mary grabbed my arm. "Where are you going?" I looked at her, bewildered. A threesome isn't my thing. Her grip tightened, her nails digging into my skin. "Are you crazy?" she hissed. I yanked my arm free. "Am I crazy? Or are you? Do you even know what you're doing, Mary? Stop disgusting me. I opened the door and walked out. The man had already changed out of my pajamas and was now dressed in a sharp suit. He gave Mary a reluctant smile. Mary, I should go. I don't want to cause any more trouble. He turned to me. You've got it all wrong. Here's your pajamas. He handed them to me, but I stepped back, letting them fall to the floor. Trash belongs in the trash can, I said. Mary's eyes shot up, glaring at me. You don't have to leave, she told him. Stay here. His eyes lit up, but he hesitated. Isn't that inappropriate? Don't worry about it, Mary insisted. Stay. Or do you want to go to a hotel? Can you afford that? He sighed. You know me too well. Their casual conversation stunned me. I didn't want to say another word. I picked up my suitcase and left. As I hurried down the stairs, a cold wind hit me, making me shiver. The nausea rose, and I bent over, dry heaving. I felt overwhelmed by sadness, anger, and betrayal. My carefully maintained composure shattered. This was absurd. I never thought Mary would cheat. People always said that when men get rich, they change. But women can be the same, especially in a relationship where the woman is richer. I never cared that Mary was wealthier than me. It was a fact, but I trusted her. I believed that even if things went wrong between us, we could part amicably. It wasn't about love, it was about character. But reality had slapped me hard. Mary, what are you doing? And who is this man? With these questions in mind, I went to our old apartment. I remembered a photo album in the storage room, a birthday gift to Mary from her college days. It was filled with photos of her, some alone, some with others. It was a thoughtful gift. I asked her who had given it to her. She said a college friend. I asked if he liked her. After all, you don't make such an effort unless you care. Mary didn't deny it. Her honesty stopped me from asking more. The old apartment wasn't far, just a 20-minute drive. I preferred it to our new place. We lived there for 2.5 years before moving out after getting married. Sometimes, when I was upset, I'd come here to relax. It always calmed me. I found the album quickly. The photos showed a young Mary, reserved but full of youth. Many looked like they were taken secretly, mostly side profiles. In the few frontal shots, Mary wore her graduation gown. She had photos with different people, both girls and boys. I examined each one carefully until I froze. One photo stood out. The two people were close, arms touching. The boy was smiling broadly, and though Mary wasn't smiling, her hand was gripping his sleeve tightly. Despite the changes in their appearances, I recognized them immediately. It was her. The back of the photo had two names, Mary and Robert, with a small heart drawn between them. So it was them. I didn't know what to do. I put the album down and sat on the couch, trying to rest my eyes for a moment. I was jolted awake by the sound of construction from the apartment upstairs. My sleep had been restless, filled with fragmented dreams. When I finally opened my eyes, my mind was still foggy. It took me a moment to realize I was in the old house. It had been too late to go anywhere else last night, so I had crashed on the couch. Not far from me, someone was sitting and staring intently. It was Mary. I wasn't surprised to see her there. I remembered a time when we had a fight, and I ran off to the old house. She found me within an hour. I had asked her then, "How did you know I'd be here?" Mary had replied, "Where else would you go?" She knew I had nowhere else. I was an orphan, and Mary had given me a home. Someone once asked her why she didn't sell the old house. She had said, "Let's keep it. If someone gets upset, they can come here to cool off." My feelings for Mary were complicated, love mixed with gratitude. I thought we could live out our lives in quiet contentment. I sighed and went to the bathroom to freshen up. Mary had bought breakfast, and I didn't hesitate to eat. After finishing, I asked, "His name is Robert, isn't it?" Mary nodded. "Yes." I looked at her. "Mary, what are you doing? Bringing your ex into our home, letting him wear my pajamas, drying his hair. Are you trying to reenact some long-lost romance?" "Believe it or not, nothing happened between us," she said. I shook my head. "I don't believe you." Mary stared at me for a long moment, then rubbed her temples and placed 2 receipts in front of me. "He stayed at the house last night. I stayed at a hotel. Here's the proof. If you need more, I can get the surveillance footage. Nothing happened between us. That's the truth." I didn't look at the receipts. If Mary dared to show them to me, they wouldn't be fake. "But he stayed at our house, and you stayed at a hotel." "Mary, your actions are beyond my understanding. Robert is a light sleeper and has OCD. He can't stay in a hotel," she explained. "Did he tell you that, or are you just that considerate of him?" I asked, my anger rising. Seth, talk to me properly. Stop being sarcastic. I had reached my limit. I want to talk properly, but have you been honest with me? Light sleeper, OCD, can't stay in a hotel. But every time I travel for work, I stay in hotels. When have you ever shown me that kind of concern? Mary seemed to hit a nerve. She stood up. I stayed out. I told you nothing happened. What more do you want? It felt like a series of blows to my head. I gripped the table to steady myself and said as calmly as I could, I want a divorce. Mary's face changed. Shut up. Take that back, she said through gritted teeth. We stared each other down. Mary closed her eyes, clenched her fists, and when she opened them again, she was composed. Divorce is not an option. We fell into a cold war. I stayed at the old house, and neither of us reached out to the other. I didn't know what she was thinking. I was waiting to calm down enough to handle this situation efficiently. One day, her assistant called me. Seth, did you and Mary have a fight? What happened? I asked. She hesitated for a few seconds. Mary had a business dinner tonight and drank a lot. I was going to call you, but a strange man came and picked her up in her car. I was silent for a few seconds, then sent her a photo of Robert. Was it him? Yes, she said. I chuckled softly. If nothing happened, that's great. But it looks like we need to move the divorce up the agenda. The longer this drags on, the more foolish I look. I'm a man of action. The next morning, I went straight to a lawyer and had a divorce agreement drafted. Mary and I kept our finances separate, so the agreement was just a formality. When Mary saw me at the office, she was momentarily stunned but quickly regained her composure. This is the office. If you have something to discuss, let's do it at home, she said. We'll go home, but not now. We need to talk about our divorce. I placed the divorce papers in front of her. Mary stared at them for a long time. You came here just to talk about divorce? She asked. Mary tore up the papers. Did I not make it clear? Divorce is not an option. I pretended not to hear her and pulled out another set of papers. She tore those up too. I kept producing more, and she kept tearing them up. By the 12th set, Mary's face was dark with anger. Seth, are you sure about this? I sneered. Absolutely. Mary's voice was filled with venom. I'll say it one last time. I will not divorce you. My anger flared. What do you mean by that? Mary took a deep breath. Seth, how long are you going to keep this up? You're leaving home and demanding a divorce over something that didn't even happen. Do you think this is fun? You're acting like a petty child. Do you know how exhausting this is for me? I looked at Mary calmly. I'm not playing games, Mary. I really want a divorce. Why? She asked, bewildered. Just because of Robert? Nothing happened between us. Where is Robert staying now? Did you arrange a place for him? Does he have a car? Or did you give him one? Why did he pick you up when you were drunk? Where did you go after that? What happened? I shook my head, laughing bitterly. Actually, you don't need to answer. If I hadn't come home that night, what would have happened? Nothing would have happened, Mary said, growing agitated. I went to the hotel because it was already planned. If you don't believe me, you can ask. This is the second time I'm telling you this. Mary, I don't believe you. No matter what you say or do, no matter how much evidence you provide, I don't believe you. I don't want to dig into what you did or didn't do. I just don't trust you anymore. I'm good at cutting ties. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it this far. Life has been harsh to me, and I've learned to protect myself. I won't let anything drag me down because no one is pulling me up. I'm an orphan. Before I was born, I was called a posthumous child. My mother found out she was pregnant after my father died in a car accident. She didn't want to have me, which was understandable. My grandparents begged her to keep me. They gave her my father's inheritance and the car accident compensation to buy my life. She gave birth to me, stayed for the postpartum period, and then left with the money. My grandparents raised me. I have no feelings for my birth mother. No love, no hate, no longing. These emotions are useless and only cause pain, so I let them go. When my grandparents passed away, I was in middle school. I became a complete orphan. After enduring the despair and grief, I took a month to process my emotions and then started over. Later, someone offered $100,000 for my grandparents' old house. I agreed. Everyone said I was foolish, that it was a bad deal, and they were taking advantage of me because I had no family. But I knew I couldn't keep the house. I needed the money for school and to survive, so I sold it and left the place where I grew up. Now it's Mary. She didn't explain things to me right away. Whatever she says now, I won't believe. I don't want to become paranoid. I won't let this consume me. Let's divorce. Let's not make this uglier than it needs to be. No, she said firmly. The more resolute I was about the divorce, the more determined Mary was to stay married. I couldn't understand her anymore. When negotiations failed, I decided to file for divorce. But what I didn't expect was that the day after I filed, Mary hit me with economic sanctions. She wanted to terminate all business dealings with our company. Mary and I met through the company. Back then, I had just graduated from college and started a business with a few classmates. We were full of ambition, but reality was harsher than we imagined. We had no funds, no connections, and no one willing to invest in us. We couldn't even get a chance to pitch our ideas. Just when we were about to give up and find regular jobs, a company reached out to us. They wanted to talk. We thought we had found a lifeline, but it turned out to be a trap. The person in charge told me, "Sleep with me for a year, and I'll give you whatever you want." I refused without hesitation, but they wouldn't let it go. In the chaos that followed, I hit him over the head with a bottle and got arrested. He threatened to make sure I rotted in jail. I had prepared for the worst, but then Mary appeared, like a savior. She easily settled the matter, bailed me out, and even sent someone to negotiate a partnership with our company. I thought she wanted to play the same rich people games, so I started unbuttoning my shirt, asking if she wanted to get straight to it or if I should take a shower first. But she buttoned my shirt back up, one button at a time. "You don't need to do this," she said. I asked her why she was helping me. She said, "Just think of it as me pitying you." I accepted her pity without resentment because, frankly, I was pitiful. With Mary's help, our company took off. But now, she was using this against me. And I had to admit, she had me cornered. I went to Mary's office. "What do you want?" I asked. Mary looked up at me. "Withdraw the divorce petition." We stared each other down. Her calm demeanor made her stance clear. I laughed. "Fine, I'll withdraw it. Anything else?" My quick compliance didn't seem to satisfy her. She frowned. After a long pause, she asked, "When are you moving back? Is that part of the deal?" I asked. Mary's lips pressed into a thin line. "Yes." "Fine. I'll move back today," I said. Mary threw her pin on the desk and walked out. The smile I had forced on my face vanished as soon as I got in the car. I hated feeling like I was being controlled, even by Mary. I made a call and scheduled a meeting. The meeting lasted until the early hours of the morning, but didn't yield the results I wanted. My plan was to find a new partner. The market is vast. It doesn't revolve around Mary. If she could pull out, so could we. But my partners disagreed. They had grown too comfortable and preferred stability over change. Mary's terms were generous, and any termination of our partnership would result in losses. Their stance was clear. As long as Mary was willing to work with us, she was the first choice. I scoffed at their words. It was clear we were no longer on the same page. It was time for me to leave, but I needed time to ensure I could secure my share of the funds without any losses. So, I moved back in. When I returned, Mary was still awake, sitting in the living room with her laptop. She took off her glasses when she saw me. "We need to talk." "I'm tired. Maybe next time," I said, brushing her off. Mary's face darkened, but I ignored it and went straight to the guest room. I didn't know where Robert had slept that night or what he had touched. Everything in the house felt tainted. I ended up grabbing a sheet and sleeping on the couch. When I woke up, I found a blanket covering me. My face darkened instantly, and I threw the blanket on the floor. Mary was in the kitchen, frying eggs. "Why did you cover me with a blanket?" I demanded. Mary stopped what she was doing and took a deep breath. "I changed all the sheets and covers. Everything is clean." "Doesn't matter," I said through gritted teeth. "Even the air in this house makes me sick." Mary whispered, "You're being unreasonable. He just stayed for one night. Nothing happened. What are you making a fuss about?" I let out a cold laugh, looking at her. "Making a fuss? Wait until I bring a woman home. Let her wear your pajamas and blow-dry her hair. Then you'll understand." "Don't you dare," Mary said, her eyes blazing. I shook my head calmly. "It's not that I don't dare. It's that I won't. I have standards. I wouldn't do something so disgusting." Our conversation ended on a sour note. Mary threw the breakfast into the trash and stormed back to her room. I didn't hold back either, slamming the door behind me. And so, we fell into another Cold War. I was busy, leaving early and coming home late. Mary was busy too. For several days, we didn't even see each other. During this time, I met with some people and discussed selling my shares. Ideally, I would sell to my partners, But they had made their stance clear. They weren't on my side. To maximize my benefits, I had to look elsewhere. My only concession was to distribute the shares widely, ensuring that no single person had decision-making power. Whether they wanted to buy back the shares later was their business. The negotiations went smoothly. As the money started coming in, I completely withdrew from the company. My partners were furious, storming in to confront me, their faces red with anger. I gave you a choice. You didn't take it. This isn't so bad. Mary and I were bound to have a falling out eventually. This way, you won't get caught in the crossfire. Besides, you weren't exactly against kicking me out. They avoided my gaze. That's nonsense. We never thought of that. I found it all quite pointless. You're just afraid of Mary. With the company matters settled, it was time to deal with Mary. But before I could, Robert found me. He said he wanted to talk. I agreed. As soon as we sat down, he demanded, "Why haven't you divorced her yet? Don't you have any self-respect? A grown man being supported by a woman. How long are you going to cling to Mary?" I couldn't help but laugh. And who are you to say this? Her lover, her side piece, or her kept man? Has Mary even acknowledged your status? She told me there's nothing between you two. Do you understand what that means? You don't even qualify to be her side piece. I looked him up and down. And it's not that I don't want a divorce. It's that Mary doesn't. Is that all you've got? Robert's face turned red with anger. You're lying. Mary would never want to stay married to you. She doesn't even like you. If it weren't for, he suddenly stopped. I looked at him, puzzled. If it weren't for what? Robert grinned, a smug look on his face. Haven't you ever wondered why someone like Mary would suddenly appear and help you out of nowhere? Seth, you can't be that naive. Do you really think it was all a coincidence? What are you getting at? I asked. Robert said, "Want to know? Beg me." I stared at him, then chuckled. Keep it to yourself. I stood up to leave. Robert panicked. Stop right there. I kept walking, pushing the door open. Seth, wait. Robert raised his voice. Come back. I have something to show you. I smirked and sat back down. Robert's bravado was gone. Good. Now we can talk. He pulled out a photo and slid it across the table. This is Mary and her adoptive mother. I glanced at the photo. Mary looked about 5 or 6, small and thin. If Robert hadn't told me, I wouldn't have recognized her. But the woman in the photo made me pause. A long-buried memory surfaced. I had seen this woman before, back home. In my grandmother's wardrobe, under a pile of clothes, there was a photo. It showed 2 people, my late father and my runaway mother. I didn't know much about Mary's family. I only knew her parents both passes away, and she had no siblings or close relatives. Like me, she was an orphan. The only difference was that she had money, and I was dirt poor. Mary would visit her parents' graves often. I had offered to go with her once, but she declined, saying it wasn't necessary. Her refusal also made me abandon the idea of taking her to see my grandparents' graves. Sometimes, I wondered if our way of interacting was right. I had no answer. I had no experience with relationships and no elders to guide me. In the end, I just told myself, this is how it is. I carried this attitude through 5 years with Mary, and now, Robert was telling me those 5 years were a joke. He said Mary was an orphan, raised in an orphanage, but she was lucky. At 6, she was adopted by a wealthy couple who treated her as their own, especially her adoptive mother. Her adoptive father died when she was 12, and her adoptive mother passed away from cancer 6 years ago. On her deathbed, Mary's adoptive mother revealed that she had a son she had wronged and asked Mary to find him and take care of him. Guess who that son is, Robert said. His face twisted in a smile. At that time, Mary and I were still in love. She suddenly broke up with me, saying she had to fulfill her mother's last wish. But why? She was my girlfriend. How could she just break up with me to fulfill her mother's wish? What about me? Seth, you're so lucky. Your mother thought of you until her dying breath. She made Mary your guardian angel. But what about me? Why did you have to sacrifice our love? I took the photo from Robert. As I was leaving, he called out, Seth, you will divorce Mary, right? Yes, I said. But are you sure you want someone who can discard you so easily? Robert couldn't say anything back to this. So I left. Mary, we need to talk. I arranged to meet Mary at home. She arrived half an hour late, looking exhausted as she slumped on the couch. What do you want to talk about? I placed the photo in front of her. So, your adoptive mother is my biological mother. Mary's hand, which had been massaging her temples, froze. Who gave you this? I shook my head. That's not important. Let's talk about something that matters. Mary collapsed back onto the couch. It's Robert, isn't it? I should have known. Only he has seen that photo. So, what do you want to know? After a long silence, Mary began to speak. She told me more details. My biological mother was a remarkable woman who built her own cosmetics brand from scratch. She met her husband, and they got together. Mary's adoptive father couldn't have children, so her mother suggested adopting from an orphanage. That's how they adopted Mary. Mary said, "The greatest fortune of my life was meeting them and becoming their child. But the good times didn't last. My adoptive father passed away, and then my adoptive mother. It was only then that I learned about you. I hope you understand. Mom always thought of you. She never forgot you. She treated me well to make up for what she owed you. She loved you. Her dying wish was for you to be well and to forgive her. I'm sorry for keeping this from you for so long." Listening to Mary, I waited for an emotional breakdown or an outburst, but I felt nothing, just an unprecedented calm. "I'm sorry for your loss," I said flatly. Mary looked at me, shocked. "Is that all you have to say?" I thought for a moment. Given that we share the same mother, let's part in peace. Let's finalize the divorce quickly. "Seth," Mary called my name but then fell silent. After a long pause, she asked, "Are you still holding a grudge against your mother?" "She's gone. Can't you forgive her?" I exhaled deeply. "It's not about holding a grudge." "Seth, shut up." I chuckled. "Fine. What do you want to hear? That I've forgiven her? That I love her to death? That she's the best mother in the world? That I'll remember and thank her forever? Satisfied? If you need, I can even say it at her grave. Now, can we talk about the divorce?" "Seth, I know my name. You don't need to keep reminding me." Mary, holding back her anger, said, "I know this is a lot to take in. We don't have to rush. When you're ready, we can talk." I waved my hand dismissively. "Let's get this over with. What do you want? What do you need me to do? I can even visit your adoptive mother's grave every year if that's what it takes. Just divorce me. Let me go." Every word I spoke to Mary, every second spent with her, felt like discovering half a fly in my sandwich. "I won't divorce you. I promised my mother I would take care of you." "Great. Now I've swallowed the other half of the fly." "Mary, respect for the dead is important, but you're forcing my hand here." Mary frowned, clearly uncomfortable. "You said your adoptive mother was remarkable, that she built her own cosmetics brand. Do you know where her money came from?" Mary shook her head. "No, I do. It was my father's blood money. Do you know how ruthless she was? She took all the compensation for my father's death, every penny of her earnings, and left. When she left, she pretended to take me for a walk, then abandoned me on the street to buy herself time. It was winter. I nearly died out there." "That's impossible," Mary instinctively denied. I continued, "I don't hate her. Hating her would be a waste of energy. To me, she's just a stranger. But you keep insisting she loved me, that she cared about me. Where was she when I was struggling with my grandparents? Where was she when they died, and people threatened to sell me if I didn't sell the house? Where was she when I was bullied and nearly took a knife to defend myself? Where was she when my money was stolen in college and I almost jumped off the roof? Why bring up emotions? As a stranger, she was nothing. With emotions, she deserves to be in hell." My words left Mary pale and speechless. "I didn't know. She wanted to make it up to you. She just didn't know how to face you." I scoffed. How considerate of her. Living a comfortable life while I was a thorn in her side. I must be such a burden. "That's not what I meant," Mary said, trying to explain, but she was clearly not good at it. The strong emotions were making me feel unwell. I rubbed my temples. "You people are something else. She felt guilty towards me, so she compensate you. Shouldn't the compensation come to me? She got cancer and wanted to die in peace, so she dumped the responsibility on you. Now you have to repay her, fulfill her wishes, so you married me. How unfair is that?" I looked at Mary curiously. "Why did you think marrying me was the best way to compensate me? Did you think I couldn't find a wife? You should have just given me more money. Really, Mary, let's get divorced." That day, I rambled on about many things. Mary, after a few initial words, remained silent, listening quietly. We both knew there was no future for us. Divorce was inevitable. I waited 3 days for Mary, and she finally agreed. This time, she drafted the divorce agreement. She gave me a large portion of her assets, including company shares and other things. I didn't look closely. I wasn't interested in those things. My therapist once told me my biggest problem was a lack of desire. I had no desire for anything, not even money. It made sense, given that I had no one behind me. He asked me, "What do you want most?" You need to find something you want, or you'll lose the will to live. I thought for a long time and then told him, I want someone to love me. I work hard, live hard, and try to be a better person so that someone will love me. But Mary destroyed all that. She ruined 5 years of my life. But I can't hate her. I can't let her leave such a deep mark on my heart. I have to remind myself that she did help me once, regardless of her motives. She saved me when I was in trouble. What I need to do is let her go. Cut ties and move on. That's what my therapist told me. You have to decisively let go of the things dragging you down and move forward without hesitation. The people who love you are ahead. Mary and I divorced. I decided to leave the city. Robert left too. He said, "It's really pointless. I couldn't let her go for so many years, and it turns out it was all for nothing. Do you think I wasted all those years? By the way, I'm sorry for interfering in your life." I'm sorry. I didn't forgive him, nor did I hate him. He was just a passerby in this bad chapter of my life. He tripped me, made me fall, but I dusted myself off and kept moving forward. I won't look back. And Mary? It wasn't until Seth left the city that she began to truly understand him. To her, Seth had always been just someone to repay a debt to. Marrying him, giving him resources and money, she thought that was enough. Seth was a vague symbol to her. She never saw Seth making her medicine, trying to make her laugh, his hopes, or his disappointments. 3 months after Seth left, Mary found out he had been seeing a therapist. The doctor wouldn't disclose his condition but said, "Living is very hard for Seth, but he tries so hard. He's the strongest patient I've ever seen." From that day on, Mary started looking for Seth. She didn't want to disturb him, just to know he was safe. A year later, she found him in a small town. But he wasn't alone. He was holding the hand of a toddler just learning to walk. At that moment, Mary felt her heart shatter. Seth was darker and thinner, but he seemed softer, more at peace. Seth was surprised to see her. Long time no see. For the first time, Mary was at a loss for words. Long time no see. Her eyes kept drifting to the child. "Did you get married?" Seth chuckled. "I'm not that quick. He's an adopted orphan." Mary's heart soared and then plummeted. She let out a slow breath, feeling a strange sense of relief. In that moment, she realized she had hoped for a reconciliation. She liked Seth, but Seth said he would never marry again. Mary suddenly wanted to cry. What had she done all these years? "Can I visit you? See the child?" Mary asked. Seth shook his head. "Better not. Otherwise, I'll have to move again. It's a hassle." Mary felt even more sorrowful. She suddenly felt very alone. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to buy a house next to Seth's and stay close. But she knew she couldn't. She could only say goodbye. Seth smiled faintly. "Take care. Let's not meet again." Seth left. A week after Mary appeared, he moved away with the child. He was telling Mary through his actions, "Don't look for him, don't disturb him." When Mary heard the news, she drank all night. The hangover the next day was so painful it brought tears to her eyes. But she had lost the person who would make her medicine. She gave up looking for Seth again. She wished him happiness. This is the end of the story. Thanks for listening. Please tell us how you feel about the story in the comments.